Darkness falls inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep, in a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss, where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
Hello out there in Electric Internet land. Welcome to the SideQuest episode of Inside the GM Studio, where we field questions from the internet about gaming and GMing and sometimes borderline therapy sessions with people. But hey, you know, we all need a little bit of love. I am your host, David.
I'm Matt.
And I'm going to do the thing where I roll the die. That's it. For those of you that play on VTTs only, we used to have these plastic polyhedral things, and you used to roll them to generate numbers. They're lots of fun. All right, I get a 16 this week. Let's see what Reddit has in store.
All right. So this one is going to come from A Huckgaze1102 on our Ask Game Masters with the title, How to Heist Right. I'm running a heist one-shot for my group of 4 level 9 players. A while ago, I was involved with another heist campaign, and it was a huge flop. The characters got stuck in very tropey D&D playing and couldn't get into the whole heist mindset. Now I'm worried I'll run into to the same problems, and I'm curious, what have other DMs done to make heists run well for everyone?
Heists run well for everyone. Wow, okay. I feel like we had this question, or at least a variation of this question previously. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Maybe asking about heist, but yeah, this one just came up. This came about a month ago.
Well, the first question I would have is, how is he running a heist campaign for level 9 characters, but doesn't really know whether his characters are likely to fall into some sort of tropes? Is it like he's switching the campaign, like he resolved a campaign with levels 1 through 8 and now he's doing another campaign?
Nope, it looks like this was just a one shot that he's making.
Oh, that's right, he said it's a one shot.
Yep, I'm running a heist one shot for my group of 4 level 9 players.
Oh, well, a one shot is probably the best. Okay, so I got confused because he said campaign. Like, to me, a one-shot's not a campaign, it's an adventure. And even more acutely, probably not even an adventure, a quest, typically.
No, oh yeah, a while ago, I was involved with another heist campaign, and it was a huge flop.
Yeah, because he said another heist campaign. But what he means is he did a heist campaign, and now he's doing a heist one-shot.
Yeah.
Sorry, semantics. I just was like, yeah, the heist things don't usually play well over a long arc, at least not from what I would imagine. I've never run.
not long arcs. No.
Yeah, so
not a whole campaign.
So he's probably already well positioned by just making sure that it's a one shot. You probably just ought to be making sure that there is drama in every scene and that the stakes are being raised in every scene. So typically a heist is going to start from like a point of low energy and just keep building on the stakes until it culminates in a crescendo, because it's not like going to continue on. There doesn't need to be like an ebb and flow of rising and falling action the way there does in an adventure or a campaign. You just ramp it up, and then maybe you have 1 or 2 scenes after that kind of cool down and let the players have a sense of closure. You know, they make off with the goods or whatever it is that they're doing. But you're well positioned in a one shot to do that. So I would suggest almost breaking it down like an episode of a television show or like a movie. First act, second act, third act. And this is why it came to mind, because I believe we discussed this previously. Maybe it was just the question was about espionage, not specifically heist. But
yep, you're right.
But we had said, like, okay, there's going to be some low energy scenes where the the stakes of the heist, who the key players are, what it is that they want, and how the players' motives and goals align or don't align with them. And you can throw a few wrenches in there to add a little bit of mystery. Then the second act is going to be pretty short, unlike like a film or something where the second act is the bulk of the narrative. You're going to have, well, actually, you probably could say it's like a 4 act structure. You have like the planning phase where the players need to kind of plan things out, and that's going to be probably through a variety of role playing encounters that have increasingly higher stakes, i.e., the party has more and more to gain and lose with each interaction. So they're laying all of the pieces for the board of the game that is the heist. They could be doing skill checks, making use of their connections socially. They could be using tool proficiencies, scouting, infiltrating, intel gathering, stuff like that. Then once the stage is set, then you have the actual quest itself. So the heist, the day of or whatever, and you need to have that play out, and you need to have a few complications in there that are plot twists that are going to throw the players for a loop and see how they deal with it. And I believe we discussed this previously in a similar, like, infiltrating a castle, which I guess isn't really a heist per se, but might as well be. You're probably infiltrating to steal something or rescue somebody or plant something. That's usually the crux of a heist. So you have a few complications, and then you should have some metrics by which you're keeping track of how many times each scene, how many things play out like the PCs had planned, and how many things don't play out like the PCs planned, and have some sort of way to quantify that. And as they move on, if they're doing well, then things should get they should fall into place a little more and more and more, and there should be some payoff to doing things exactly by the book. And if they shit the bed, then it should get increasingly difficult, with the bottom rung being, well, they might need to abandon the heist because they just shit the bed so badly, and now all the guards are alerted and they can't fight them all and they have to abscond into the night. If things go well, then there should be some sort of crescendo where there is either a big bad, something that's, locked away, where they need to make use of a lot of their skills, maybe a skill challenge, maybe something to that effect, but something that tests their mettle and their skills against some big bad. Or perhaps if they're saving somebody, they need to, okay, now that they got the person, they have to get out before X thing happens, and it's a race against the clock sort of scenario. That's a pretty classic heist situation, either because the guards are getting their alarms raised, or because the castle is collapsing around them, or something to that effect. Then, or if it's the defeating a big bad, then you have them rush off into the night, and then you maybe have a scene where they deal with the fruits of victory, or the spoils of whatever it is they did, what they do with those riches, or what reputation that they enjoy. Or if they fail, then what are the consequences, leaving it on a darker note. That said, I acknowledge that he said that the campaign kind of devolved into a lot of tropes, and a lot of what I laid out is pretty tropey. But I don't think it really matters if it's tropey. If it's dynamic, and it's tense, and it's fast paced, and it's interesting. If you want to avoid tropes, then try having some of the key players involved have interesting or different motivations. Give some of the NPCs, throw in some factions, have them have offbeat and off-color things, or maybe have the heist itself not be a typical thing where they're just trying to get this good item. Planting something is kind of a subversion of the heist, where you're trying to put something somewhere for a specific purpose, as opposed to get it out.
I think the questioner doesn't mind heist tropes, because he said that they got stuck in very tropey D&D playing. So he's talking about D&D tropes.
So maybe he's saying that kind of like we were talking about with that VTM article, where it just kind of devolves into like dungeon crawling, hack
Yeah.
and slash kind of, and it's not a heist because it's a D&D adventure. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they don't mind the heist tropes, but try to think about the ways you can leverage the player's skills in ways that are unique. Lay little breadcrumbs. If you have, it's probably not going to work if you have a bunch of, brutish melee focused, fighters and barbarians and paladins in your group. That's probably not going to work. So you might want to make sure that the characters are playing monks and rogues and to a lesser degree wizards and things that have classes that have stealth and have exploration skills and they have toolkit proficiencies. Yeah, you're going to want some combat in there, but generally speaking, a heist is more about kind of not alerting the people that you would need to fight precisely because you're going into the belly of the beast and the odds against you are overwhelming. So it is not an exercise in brute strength or grit. It's an exercise in wit and being clever and being deft at certain things. So leverage those skills when possible. Maybe if you have one guy in your group that's a little more brutish, you can figure out, maybe there's a portcullis that he can lift or there's walls that he can climb because he's got good athletics. Maybe there's a small, group of sentries that he can dispatch with really quickly before they raise the alarm. There's nothing wrong with having fights, but I would suggest that they should be short and furious skirmishes with
Hmm.
very few enemies as a way to kind of dispatch with them the way you would like, shoot a guy in a guard tower from afar. And again, if you have characters with ranged capabilities and stealth, crossbows and stuff like that, I would encourage you to be doing some of that too, scouting out and figuring out what the layout is. Have your smarter characters being able to establish what the sentry pattern is by making intelligence checks and stuff like that, or using divination magic to learn things they otherwise wouldn't be able to learn about the inside of the area where they can't get to yet. All these things are great options and are certainly in line with the heist mentality. But that said, I think Matt has actually run more heist adventures than I ever have, so I will
Hmm.
defer to your things that if I've left anything out.
Okay, I got a lot to talk about this because this is one of my very favorite types of play.
I know
Uh,
that.
Blades in the Dark, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk. One time and one time only did I try, and it was a published adventure. What is it? It's something Dragon Heist. I have the book. I had it on Roll 20. I started playing it with my old group back when I was living out in Detroit. It was Rob, Liam, Jason, and Nick, who all David know. All of you listening, you probably don't know any of these people,
Yeah, I know all them. You've been
but
playing with all
David
those guys
knows
a
all
long
of them.
time.
This was a long time ago. We started it, and it kind of fell to the wayside because I think it was the same reason, like the questioner was saying. Those guys, they love heist games, but to them, D&D isn't a heist game.
Sure.
Um, the mechanics, the skills you have, don't really work like Shadowrun or Blades in the Dark do. Um, those two games, Shadowrun and Blades in the Dark, they have mechanics built in for heist-like games.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that I will start with if you want to do it in D&D. You know what? I'm going to send you that book, David. Maybe because I don't remember fuck all from it. And it is replayable because depending on what season you play it in, different things happen.
Well, you're
So
you're
if you
talking
ever,
about Dragon Heist.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you ever want to run that, you should because, and I will play in it because I don't remember the mass majority of it other than dealing with Xanathar, the
Hmm.
Xanathar. Um, so one thing I will say is steal from other games if you want to stick with D&D. Steal from those other games, especially like Blades in the Dark, where you can do a flashback mechanic. And I love the flashback mechanic just because I'm a huge fan of Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
And while in Ocean's 11, great heist movie.
Yeah.
And while the heist is happening, it's happening all in a big, well, actually, it's a foreshadowing. He's telling you how it's going to work out, and
Yeah.
you're watching it as it's actually happening. It kind of works in the same way with the flashback. Also using the clocks in Blades in the Dark, bringing up that tension, like David was saying. You raise the stakes, raise the tension. When you have timers and clocks, it's just that little extra push to give the players. It's like watching an egg timer while playing a board game, or if you guys play chess and you play speed chess, hitting the clock and watching it tick down as your opponent might run out of time.
The little
It's what,
hourglass in some
yeah.
games. Yeah.
Those really help out. I will tell you the best way that I've found to just structure a heist is that you first start off with knowledge checks to know what to see what the players' characters know about the target. After that, it's time for legwork. They should go out, get all the information they can by either going to library, checking online, shaking down people that might know. If you're just a tough guy that's good at intimidation, you can always just go rough some motherfuckers up and get some information about it. Just going and talking to other contacts, going to bars, going to other local places and schmoozing with people and getting information about it. If there's other player characters that are more engineered or engineering based, they can start working on devices or whatever they need to. If they need to hollow out a serving cart so that a small Asian man can fit in it to do flips and tumble through lasers later, there you go. They can start engineering this. They can use their crafters tools and build these things. After the legwork starts going into preparation, where you could just sit down, have a nice role-playing session of them talking about. You can even draw out the map. If you have the map of the place and they find it, set it out there. Let them draw on it themselves, almost like a set of blueprints as they're making this plan. And then it's time to execute, and that's just where action comes in. Usually heists, like David was saying, if you're going to have combat in it, they should be tight, short, and quiet, because nothing ruins a heist like loud noises, finding dead bodies, and other people shooting and trying to kill you as well. You want it to go away very quickly. You want to do it silently, and you want it nice and compact. Those are the big things of running heists. From what I've learned in the past, they're super fun, especially for one shots. That's why in Shadowrun and in Blades in the Dark and other heist games, each of those heists are only supposed to last anywhere between 1 and 4 sessions, because they're not supposed to last an entire campaign. If you're trying to make an entire campaign into a heist, it's going to be a slog, and it's going to be very tough. Heist should always be very, very quick. I've always played my Shadowrun games that a single run lasts no more than 2 sessions. That's the way I like it. If I'm doing strictly heist and Shadowruns, each one 2 sessions at the most. Usually that'll keep the players engaged. They think it's a lot funner that way, and then they just get to look forward to something brand new really soon. Trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. Those are the main points that I had.
I can kind of piggyback on some of the things you said, though. You, as part of the legwork too, I wanted to kind of emphasize that it should be as wide. You said like initially knowledge checks, right? And then that's kind of on that point. I wanted to mention that is the time when, if you want the spirit of the heist to be maintained, what you need to do is you need to communicate the gravity and the stakes of what's going to happen, so that the players prepare as much as possible. They have to know that they can't raise alarm, that this is like a stealth operation, and that if they raise the alarm at point A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, that it's going to be big trouble, and that things could go from just one sentry sees you and it just creates a domino effect that ruins the whole thing. It's a heist is like a house of cards, and you need to communicate that to the players so that they do the appropriate knowledge and legwork to be prepared to execute, because everything should be like on a razor's edge. And so the second point about the legwork is scouting is a big part of that. Maybe you have one thief or rogue or whatever who is in the party who is really good at stealth. And so they could conceive, if they were doing it alone, they could probably infiltrate the castle, keep, whatever, on their own. But the fact is that they have to bring the other party members along with them. But there's no reason they can't go out and like kind of like Matt was saying, get an understanding of what the layout is, get an understanding of like when the guards change posts or what their patterns are, what the inside of any given thing looks like. He's not breaking in, he's just learning information by leveraging the fact that he's stealthier than everyone else. Then that all contributes to the information that the party has at its disposal when it comes time to execute. And a good point that Matt made was to look to other things that are heist related. I think Metal Gear Solid is a great example
See, there you go. Perfect.
because you have to like do things in a specific order. You have to know that this guard is going to walk down here and I can creep up behind him, but the other guard's going to round the corner in like 10 seconds. So I have to dispatch with this guy silently and drag his body over here to this hallway. When the other guard walks by, I can fucking snipe him from the shadows, and you do that and on and on and on and on. You have to think about how you can do that with an entire party. And one of the biggest benefits, although I'm with Matt that D&D is not typically known as like a heist genre, that was in quotes in case you guys weren't watching the video.
Quote fingers.
Well, I did the quote noise to heist genre. There is some benefits to it being medieval, which is there's no gunfire, right? Gunfire alerts people. Like in a modern setting, you start firing guns and shit. That's crazy, right? Like shit gets, so you can leverage that. There's the equivalent of ranged combat, like with crossbows and stuff, but there's no gunfire. So actually it makes it a little easier to be stealthy. There's no electronics, which means there's no surveillance cameras unless it's an area that has like a high magic protection, and you could add that as a complication, but there's no surveillance cameras, there's no high-tech alarm systems. You know, they might have like a crude bell or whatever, but they can't just push a button on their belt or something and have it like raise an alarm. There's no walkie-talkies for them to communicate with one another, the guards or whomever. And so the ways in which you
maybe it's like the old D&D movie from the 90s, and they have beholders as guard dogs.
something, but you can leverage the unique things about Dungeons and Dragons that actually make a heist more interesting, or at the least you could like maybe it's easier in these capacities. That it's easier, yeah, it's easier because there's no walkie-talkies, surveillance cameras, there's no alarm systems, there's no gunfire, but they're also not just soldiers in this area. There's a beholder that protects the hallways. It's like, well, that's way more intense, and so leverage those areas that make it a little bit easier, and what tension would be there, you know, usher it over to another area where it makes it more challenging, and it'll make it feel unique to a medieval fantasy setting.
Yeah, my favorite part of heist games is the legwork itself. That's where a lot of the best role playing comes out. Because again, you're just out schmoozing or breaking legs for the majority of it, and you're getting a massive info dump on the whole place. And the more information that you get from your legwork, and you know, kind of tell your players this, tell them, you know, hey, the more you know, the better you're going to be ready for it. And that's where the anticipation comes from. Then all of a sudden the excitement starts coming up, because maybe they do find out that, oh, you know, Bob, the bell maker that we're breaking into his place, does have a beholder underneath the bell of his, you know, bell maker shop.
Yeah.
And they're just like, holy shit, there's a fucking beholder. We got to figure out how to get past a beholder without
Well, you
making
can
a
even-
bunch of noise.
You can even put challenges in front of the party that are before the actual quest, that are
Oh, yeah.
like the
Yep.
preparation of the quest. Like I'm thinking of, do you ever read The Tower of the Elephant?
Oh, I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, it's a Conan the Barbarian story,
Mhm.
or Conan of Samaria, if that's
Yeah.
the way you want to go. And so in the story, Conan is trying to infiltrate the Tower of the Elephant, which is said to have this massive jewel that he can steal and make a big name for himself and everything. And on his way there, he encounters this other adventurer. And the other adventurer saves him from this lion that's in the garden, because he has this big like cone that he like blows this like poisonous gas. It's like technically green lotus, I think is what it is, but it's poison. And you he blows it at the lion and it kills it, so as to not like have the lion roaring and making a bunch of noise and like fighting them, getting all beat up before you ever even get in the tower because the lions guard the gardens. However, in the is it Modiphius? The D20 version of the Conan RPG,
Yeah.
when you play that quest, which is kind of like a heist quest, when you play it, initially there's this whole leg of the adventure where you're aware that there are lions in the garden, and you have to go on this quest to just get this green lotus shit to kill it. Stuff like that is really cool, right? Like it's like we know that there's this thing in the garden or this thing that whatever, and there's this way to circumvent it, and we can maybe take a little longer to go try to get this thing or negotiate, or it might make it easier.
Yeah.
There's a ton of locks, and maybe we can track down a master keysmith to create a skeleton lock because he designed these locks, and we can have a skeleton key or whatever, and it would make it a lot easier, but it would take more time, and maybe we would run afoul of like getting discovered, and that's a tug of war before the actual quest even begins. And so those sort of things are really interesting too, and I think are opportunities to just make little small wins like build up before you're ever even in the heist itself
Yeah.
and keep the drama taut.
Like I was saying, the legwork and the prep that David was just saying, those parts right there, I find to be some of the most exciting parts of the game. Just that ramp up there, because when the heist first starts, you had all this anticipation, all this planning, and now you're just fingers crossed that everything goes well, that the dice are going to fall really well, that we did enough legwork and prep, that our bonuses are going to be high enough
Yeah,
to get us through.
and that's good, but you also like no matter how well your PCs do, you always need to keep them on their toes by throwing them for a loop for at least a couple things that they have to deal with in the moment, because that's again part of the drama. It will be boring if they just plan everything out super well and everything goes off without a hitch, perfectly executed, no complications. That'll be, I mean, that can be fun, but it's not going to be as fun as if you throw them like they're never going to know everything about
and
the interior of this place that they're trying to get into.
seriously, and when have you ever watched a heist movie, read a book heist, read a comic book, done anything about heists where a snafu doesn't happen or there's a curveball thrown in? It's just like, holy shit, it's not, John Hancock that is bringing in the cash. It's Tony D'Souza, and
Yeah.
that's completely different. Now everything's out the fucking window.
Yeah, because you can't anticipate everything until you do it, and also you can't control other people's behavior. So it's just like a guard just happens to go on a break 10 minutes earlier than he normally would or whatever, or they switch shifts, one guard is there instead of another guard, maybe one that has a propensity toward falling asleep, where other one
Yeah.
is like hyper vigilant, and the hyper vigilant guard is there, and you counted on the other guard being there. And it's like, okay, how do you deal with this in the moment, and in what way doesn't it let everything come unraveled? That's where, in the portion where you're executing, that's where the drama is.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think that is some of the best advice we've ever given. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Anything to close us out there, David?
We're so humble. We're both
know,
so
right?
humble.
So humble. That's why you guys love us. That's why we're the best. And that's why we're going to leave you with a good night.
And good luck.
All right. Well done.
You good.